up, everybody? It's your boy Ty here with the Inner Gamer Podcast. We're talking with the guys who made The Eternal Castle. Tell me a little bit about the game.
So The Eternal Castle is a cinematic platformer that kind of tried to emulate the cinematic platforms in the early 90s. This game is technically a remake from 87, and the whole premise is that it tries to get the same vibe as a game that you would find by accident at the time. So you just get that feel of finding like some nostalgic game that you just found somewhere in a drawer and just feels like grungy, retro, experimental, new thing. Actually, the original game that I found as a kid was from a broken floppy that had the VGA graphics taken out to pirate it in a floppy. And I did find it in a drawer. I didn't even know what it was until it broke completely, unusable, thrown out. So I had to like imagine what it would have been in the future. So I made this game as an homage to that, plus all the cinematic platformers at the time, because it's a genre that kind of got a little bit lost through time for reasons that make sense. It's like not like a kind of game that it's like very responsive, but in my opinion, it does give you a feel that makes you feel very immersed because it gives that little extra physics.
Yeah, so like whenever I looked at the game and I got to move around in it a bit, it feels like a classic game that was almost perfected because of how smooth everything is and how smooth all the animations are. So tell me a little bit about the production and why you chose to do something, bring back such an old school feel and give it to these young kids, because it's something that you can just pick up and just start going with, because it's such a pretty game.
Yeah, well, it's at the time there were so many physical limitations because you had to fit a game in such a tiny amount of space.
Yeah.
So I decided to break those limitations and try to do what people at the time wanted to do. So more fluid animations, more like transitions. There's like hundreds and hundreds of animations just on the character moving. There's transitions between all of the actions. So all that side by itself at the time would have been basically impossible. Music-wise and sound design-wise, at the time they were actually experimenting with trying to figure out stuff. Jordan Mechner writes in his diaries that he wanted to put John Williams soundtracks or like John Carpenter stuff. And at the time they couldn't because PC Speaker was the only, it's like this little beeping sound.
Like 8-bit sound almost.
Yeah, so they decided to, I decided to put that also because that was something that they just wanted to have. So good instruments, good music, composer did a great job, and we also went with like very in-depth sound design. So any underscore background music or background sound effects, they're like very polished. There's a lot of subtle details. You can hear like the little flies flying in certain areas on the dead bodies, or you can, you could hear every different weapon with their own unique sounds, with a slight addition to retro bit crunch sound, so that we can actually get that feeling that it was like old, even though it feels more polished. On the design level, that is also much more polished because at the time it was like way less responsive, like 15 hertz. And we still kept it very low frame rate, but with like a better response on the action so that people wouldn't get frustrated.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about the gameplay then. So what kind of gameplay are we going to expect from
So expect an adventure that brings in different levels. So there's a puzzle game a little bit, so trying to figure stuff out, action, shooting, fighting, and most of the game, it kind of like goes in any direction that you want to go the most. One is more focused towards like melee fighting. One is more focused towards the shooting, and another world is more focused into figuring out how to move forward. But all of those three worlds can be explored and completed in any way that you desire. The way the controls feel are clunky enough to give you that like old school feel, but not clunky enough to be frustrating and just annoying to use.
So is there an overarching story that we're following?
There is. It's very, very complex and in-depth, and it's not essential to know while you play. So the thing about the story is that I went with an approach that is kind of like your archaeology approach. So if you go around the world and start exploring and reading and looking in the background, you start to understand what happens in the backgrounds. And I was not even sure that people would ever find out, but the community kind of put together the pieces and they actually found out exactly the story that this game is. So yeah, that is all up to discovery.
So what was the length of the development of this, and what engine were you using to make it?
So the length because I wanted to keep it as a movie sort of feel, it goes, depending on how you want to play it, if you want to rush it or if you want to take your time, it goes between 1.5 and 3.5 hours. So it is kind of like a movie. That's like the right way to make it feel that way. And I use Game Maker because, not being a programmer, I just wanted to have something done and polish it up and focus a lot on the gameplay. So I didn't go into the back end and like complex stuff. I kept it easy in a way that I knew that it could have been completed, and that was the approach that made it completable in a very short time, basically.
So what would your advice to somebody who's trying to make a game that, like you said, doesn't have that programming experience, but they want to get into it, they want to tell their stories? What would your advice be?
Well, my advice for now, because I only made and released 2 games, would be try out something with 2D first, and I would highly recommend Game Maker because it's very easy to use, and through that you can experiment with game design and learn a lot through seeing other people play your game. You can just learn a lot on game design by making a simple game. That's just like what I would recommend.
And I think that's the motto of what I've heard today is keep it simple. Everybody wants to make these grandiose titles, these grandiose games, but if you keep it simple and learn just simple game design techniques to make your game fun, to make, to experiment, then you're gonna be better off in the long run.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that entrepreneurial spirit that's getting you to, pursue your own game, and because it can't be easy to make an entire game with, 4 or 5 people.
Well, I come from a film background,
Okay.
so I started to think about the animations first and the story first and the world first, and then I just went with the approach of what filmmaking is trying to do, and sometimes it achieves, most times it doesn't, which is immerse you in the world and try to be in it. So that to me was the approach. It's like, I am making the world and I want the player to live in that world and go through an experience rather than, just playing something. I just wanted to make him go through a whole experience, kind of like a movie does, basically. So that was my approach.
Well, where can people find your game?
It's on Steam. It's out. Yeah, it came out in January. And there's going to be probably some updates. I'm thinking possibly releasing maybe some extra chapters. Not sure about that, but it's a possibility. So it might keep expanding.
Okay, so and is there any other merchandise? I see you've got a book here.
Yeah, there's a book for now. We're gonna probably see if we can sell floppies or something. It's all up to
Copies of the game.
Yeah.
Crazy awesome.
We're all thinking about doing this. It's not. We've got to figure out how to. That's like very beginning stage. So maybe we'll manage to sell a box set or something. It would be really nice if we
If
can.
it comes with like a floppy. That
No, we already actually have the floppy. It's like the actual original
awesome.
feel. Like, yeah.
Well, it was nice talking to you about the game. Look forward to playing it. Look forward to getting it.